Hey, be forewarned. This story might trigger a couple of y'all. Try to be nice to each other in the comments. Here we go.
I'm a 29-year-old woman, and a couple of years ago I met the man who would become my husband in a way I didn't see coming. It happened at a mutual friend's engagement party, one of those big lively gatherings where everyone is either catching up, gossiping, or dancing in the corner after a few drinks. My sister Claire was there too. She and I are only 2 years apart, and while we've had our fair share of sibling rivalry, we've always kept things civil. At least I thought so back then. I was standing at the bar, trying to decide between ordering a cocktail or just sticking with wine, when this tall, sandy-haired guy came over. He had this easy smile, leaned on the counter, and asked me what I was drinking. I told him I hadn't made up my mind yet, and he recommended something I'd never tried before. The bartender slid it over, and we started talking like we'd known each other for years. I barely noticed how long we stood there until I saw Claire walking toward us. Claire slipped into the conversation without missing a beat, her tone light but her body language leaning a little too close to him. She laughed at everything he said, even the small jokes, brushing her hair back in that way she does when she's trying to draw attention. I thought it was a little odd, but I brushed it off. Claire can be flirty with everyone, and I wasn't about to read too much into it. After a while, Ethan, yes, that was his name, asked for my number. He did it right there in front of Claire. She smiled, but it was the kind of smile you give when you're forcing it. I gave him my number, and he left to grab another drink. Claire didn't say much afterward, just asked me casually how I knew him. I told her I'd just met him, and she nodded like it was nothing. A week later, Ethan and I went on our first date. It was one of those evenings where everything just flows. Conversation never stalled. We laughed a lot, and by the end of the night, I knew I wanted to see him again. We started seeing each other regularly after that, and things just clicked. That's when I noticed Claire asking about him more than usual. At first, it seemed like harmless sisterly curiosity. What does he do for work? What are his hobbies? Is he seeing anyone else? But the questions kept coming, and there was this tone in her voice I couldn't quite place. A couple months into dating, Ethan met my parents at a small family dinner. Claire showed up dressed like she was going to a cocktail party instead of a casual night in. She made sure to sit next to Ethan and somehow kept steering the conversation toward herself. Anytime Ethan started telling a story, she'd jump in with her own, even if it was only vaguely related. After that night, I mentioned it to my friend Lena, who has known me and Claire for years. Lena didn't hesitate. She said it sounded like Claire might have a crush on Ethan. I laughed it off at first, but the thought stuck in the back of my mind. Not long after, Ethan brought it up himself. We were out for dinner when he told me, kind of hesitantly, that he got a strange vibe from Claire. Nothing major, but enough that he noticed. I told him I'd seen it too, but didn't think much would come of it. Then came the late night text. It was almost midnight when Claire sent Ethan a video link, something silly from social media. That might have been fine if she'd done it before, but she never had. I wouldn't have even known, except Ethan handed me his phone to show me something else. And there it was. A few days later, I decided to confront her. She didn't even try to deny it. She told me, plain as day, that she'd always had a thing for Ethan since the night they met. She said she thought she could have made him happier than I could. I told her straight up that Ethan was off limits and that her comments were crossing a line. She just smiled, not a nice smile either, but one of those smug little smirks, and said, "We'll see." It was the kind of moment that makes your stomach drop, because you realize this isn't just harmless flirting. This was my sister making it clear she wasn't planning to back off. At the time, I had no idea just how far she was willing to push it. 2 years after we first met, Ethan and I went away for a long weekend in the mountains. The cabin had a wraparound deck that looked out over pine trees and a lake far below. On the second night, just before sunset, he took me outside. The air was cool, the sky was starting to turn orange, and he got down on one knee. There wasn't anyone else around, just the sound of the wind in the trees. I said yes, and by the time we came back inside, I had a ring on my finger and 100 texts to send. When we got home, the engagement news spread quickly. Our parents wanted a dinner, friends started sending flowers, and my phone didn't stop buzzing. Claire called, her voice flat. She congratulated us but skipped over any excitement. At the small family get-together that followed, she hugged Ethan, held on just a moment too long, then stepped back without even looking at me. A week later, she gave us an engagement gift. It was framed, wrapped neatly in gold paper. Inside was a photo from the night Ethan and I met, taken by a friend at the bar. In this version, the image had been cropped so only Ethan was in the frame. No background, no me, just him. Ethan looked at it, eyebrows lifting, but set it aside without comment. That night, when it was just us, he mentioned how strange her behavior had been lately. He listed off the little things, lingering glances, overly personal questions, and ended with the cropped photo. I didn't disagree. Not long after, I overheard her talking to our cousin Zoe in the kitchen during a Sunday lunch. She told Zoe that Ethan wasn't the marrying type and might still change his mind. She said it like she was giving friendly advice, but it was timed so perfectly before the wedding planning that it was hard not to connect the dots. At another family dinner, she went after his career. We were all seated around the table when she asked how his job was going, then added a comment about how she didn't know how he could be satisfied without chasing something bigger. Ethan didn't bristle. He explained that he liked his work, valued having a balance, and didn't need to constantly be climbing to be happy. She smiled and told him she admired his ability to settle for less. The wedding planning started to ramp up. Against my better judgment, I named her maid of honor. It wasn't because I wanted her in that spot. It was to avoid months of family drama. She acted surprised when I told her, then immediately started asking about bachelorette plans. Her idea of a destination caught my attention. She picked a city Ethan had once mentioned he wanted to visit, a place known for its nightlife. She insisted it would be perfect, so I let her run with it. When the weekend came, we arrived at a rented condo with a view of the skyline. The first night was low key, dinner and some drinks with the group. Around midnight, while I was sitting on the couch watching a movie with two friends, Ethan's name lit up my phone. He asked if I was okay. Confused, I told him I was fine. That's when he explained Claire had just called him, sounding frantic, saying I was too drunk and flirting with strangers. I walked to the kitchen and found Claire pouring another glass of wine. I asked her why she told Ethan that story. She shrugged and said it was just a joke, nothing to take seriously. The next morning, she acted like it had never happened.
Looks like baby sis is taking this little rivalry way too far. I don't know. I wouldn't even let it go this far. I would have told my wife if her little sister was starting some shit. Yeah, we gonna need to cut all ties now that we got our own place. Change the phone number and only tell select people. Like I would have started disconnecting that little sister. They tolerating too much. But maybe I'm wrong in a perspective I'm not seeing. Help me out with this. Let's start the conversation.